Okay, the purpose of today's discussion is to talk about the database table mapping between EMP to BigLedger, specifically for the One Living project. That is some of the questions that you have is whether when you do the mapping, do you need to also synchronize the invoices and sales return, or is it just synchronizing the membership points alone?
Yes,
correct. So now the thing is that before we go deep into all this detail, right? I would like to open another window. Okay, so this window is I'm going to load the Jamboard and give you some explanation on the this is Jamboard. Okay. Jamboard. So let's go to the Jamboard number 1, and yeah, number 1 is it's already got something. It's already cleared, right? Okay, so copy is Jamboard 1. Okay, clear. Sorry, my Jamboard is still something here. Let me go to Jamboard 2 instead. Okay, Jamboard 2 is empty. Okay, first of all, in EMP, this is a EMP. Okay, microphone. Okay, so this is EMP, and with EMP, there will be a lot of data. For example, inventory, delta, stock delta. Okay, there will be membership. There will be invoices. There will be cash transaction. There will be general ledger. There will be internal stock transfer and many other things that we need to actually transfer to BigLedger, into various different database tables. Now, the problem is some of the information, when your transfer is based on membership point to here, you focus on only the membership points.
Yes.
But you will realize that if during the process of syncing this membership point, you are actually syncing also the invoices, and maybe the sales return to the BigLedger, then you will realize that inside the BigLedger you have member point. Okay, member point, and you have member point, and you have some invoices and sales return, but you do not have the stock transfer. You do not have good received note. You do not have purchases or purchase return, and other things. Correct? You have you have the this one is a cool one. Okay. You have this part, but you don't have certain other parts. Now the problem is when you are syncing stock delta. Let's say now the next program say I want to see a sales report, right? So when I want to see a sales report, when you start syncing the stock delta, you realize that yes, you sync the good received note, you sync the stock transfer, and then you sync the good received note and the stock transfer, but the invoices is being synced a second time.
Okay.
The invoices are being synced a second time. So when the invoices are being synced a second time, we actually have a problem, right?
Yes,
we have a serious problem because the invoices are duplicated. Okay, now when you're syncing the data, there are a lot of situation where you are not sure. You are not sure what is primary data, what is a secondary data. The primary data are usually referring to the documents.
Okay.
Documents. That means that invoice is a document, but inventory data is not a document. This one, green color one, is not a document. So even if you're talking about membership points, if you're talking about the points itself, is also green color. It's not it's not the document.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about cash transaction, it's not a document. General ledger is not a document. But if you're talking about, let's say, I put the red color one as the invoices. This one is a document. Okay. Let's say payment voucher is a document.
Yeah.
Good receipt note is a document.
Memo,
Credit memo,
sales return.
sales return, stock transfer,
How about something which is not accounting, like campaign activity?
campaign activity.
To gather points.
It's not the
It's not that one. Is
shake.
that one
Shake
is
document.
considered master data.
No, I mean like one shake. Okay, is it considered a document? To gather the
It's
points.
like
Okay.
member adjustment.
Okay,
right?
when you have a let's say shake and win and all those things, right? If we are developing a system in a very systematic manner, we actually need to identify that this shake and win is a document, and then with this document, I will update the points.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So there has to be a document. Right? So
There needs to be a document,
yes.
right? To say that it has win. Maybe it has got some extra parameters, extra property or something like that. But let's just say, for example, this shake and win document, maybe not only it updates the win or the points or something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe from these documents, it will also trigger something else. For example, it will trigger an email to be sent to the customer. It will trigger another when he win the point, maybe all his family members will also earn the points or something like that. Maybe because he win the point, he need to share the news with so something else need to happen to check the Facebook or something like that,
And
whether he has really.
And in addition, actually, the question he had that came to this discussion is, has the membership point been synced to EMP or not? And we could use the event of the document to keep track, isn't it?
Okay, yeah, I understand. Now, this membership point thing is a little bit of tricky. You see, when we are doing a BigLedger, okay, this BigLedger, it's not really designed for just an ERP system.
Yeah.
If it is just designed for the ERP system, then it would be much easier, whereby I can say that you only earn points when you buy something.
Okay.
I can say that. But this BigLedger, some of our other customers are actually using it just as a cloud endpoint, like a cloud API storage,
Okay.
but that is structured and permissioned, like control. So when we are using the BigLedger just as a API backend service, then of course I want to be having the ability to actually store any data I want.
Okay.
And most of it is business related. For example, be it membership point, I want to store a customer contact, all my customer database. Maybe I load it to the BigLedger as a online API address book.
Okay.
How the front end, maybe they want to develop Visual Basic, they want to do Angular, React, they want to do whatever technology. Our third-party programmers say, you don't care how I do it, what I do, what I sell, I just use your BigLedger as a back-end service. Understand? So that means that although we, in a strict ERP perspective, we need to create an invoice and a sales return when we reward the point and all that stuff, but it is not applicable to all the use cases, all the possible scenarios. And when it is not applicable to all the possible scenarios, then we have a situation whereby it will be a problem. So to answer your question, just now you asked me whether I need to sync
Document.
the membership to here, the membership, yes, my answer is yes. But if you ask me whether I should be syncing invoice, I will also tell you yes. But you are likely to do this in two different steps. I tell you why you need to do this in two different steps. Because when from everything from the EMP you sync to the BigLedger, currently in the EMP we are using a mechanism called the queue. There's a queue, there's a queue, EUE, there's a queue in the EMP. So this queue in the EMP has got the triggers. We have installed some database triggers in the database where every time a new invoice is being created, something is being created, there will be a message in the queue. The reason why we use this queue method is such that the ETL program that pick up messages from this queue, even if there's a crash, it shut down when you turn on the ETL again, it can continue to go and check the queue and see which one has been synced and which one has not been synced. And in this queue, bear in mind that because there could be multiple threads of the ETL reading and writing from this queue.
Yeah,
right?
Same time.
At the same time, is it true? Okay, so
Because it's different.
so this means
Different process.
this means you
Different process.
this means you actually need to look at this video for isolation of PostgreSQL. Okay, database. Okay. So if you look at this tutorial, I think this is
data analyst job openings in the next 2 years.
That's
huge.
Okay, so if you look at this tutorial,
So the idea is to have transactions isolated.
by TechTude, okay, you understand the meaning and the difference between the database isolation level, so that when you read and write into the queue, if you look at the PostgreSQL website, they also have okay, so Postgres 9.5 also you can see there's a 4 level of isolation level: read, uncommitted, read committed, repeatable read, and serializable. Okay? Okay, so when you understand the database isolation level, so when you actually read the queue, and then you'll be able to understand which isolation level to do. Okay, and then you read the queue, and then you will call the API here and post the transaction. Now, this ETL, in order not to create a duplicated transaction, every time you post a transaction, you are supposed to get back the GUID, or at least you can query back the GUID. So when you query back the GUID, you actually need to, let's say this ETL here is querying the GUID, and then it should actually store back into the invoice table what is the GUID here. Okay, so given that the GUID is stored in the EMP, whenever you want to post, you just need to query the GUIDs and see if it exists in the BigLedger. If it exists in the BigLedger, then you don't post again. Right? If it is an update and a delete in the EMP, then you need to the ETL need to pull from the BigLedger and see whether the data has changed. Sorry now. I pause for a while. Right. Hello? Yeah, hi.
Understand what problem we are facing for the duplication.
Okay, where were we just now? We are talking about syncing the data, and when you push the invoice to there, and you need to actually sync back. That means that save a GUID. Currently, there's columns in the EMP, right? In most of the tables, called a BLG underscore GUID.
For membership got.
Correct, right? So now, when you look at the BigLedger database, this is the BigLedger database schema. So when you open this schema, you go to the document side. Okay. I think currently, Stephen, you are storing this extension, this GUID in the extension, right? If I'm not mistaken. Correct.
Which GUID?
The GUID of an external system.
Yeah.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. If you look at the BigLedger, let's say I move this down. I come here and then I go to the second. Okay. So okay, this one there's rubbish here. Mirror. Okay. Red color and here. So if you look at the BigLedger currently, and then if you look at the fields that we have here, if you look at this server 1, server 2, server 3, 4, 5, this GUID, it is best that we reserve for BigLedger internal processes to do all this GUID. Okay. Of course, it has got a GUID unique already, but there's still server 1, 2, ideally lah. Now, but at the same time, you need to know that in BigLedger, let's say for example, even if we look at the syncing project, there's a Cellucella pumping the sales order to BigLedger. And the same sales order actually has to go to the MBS, and then after that it has to go to the ERP. Maybe in the future they will take this sales order from the BigLedger to go to another CRM system to do analysis or something like that. So sometimes when you want to conduct transactions between multiple systems with the BigLedger, if we fix the number of columns here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then another one, everybody use differently, then it can be rather confusing and we can have to keep adding columns.
Yes.
But if we actually put it inside this table, the extension, we can actually specify the extension type as maybe this is for mapping or syncing or something like that, and then with an extension code. Now this param code will be the one that say, okay, this is the external GUID or something like that. This is maybe for syncing with BigLedger sync. We purposely make it such that the type, the extension code, the extension, all these things to be generic, so that the person who call the API can actually decide what to store. Right? It's flexible because we don't know who is going to call the API. Maybe there's a reason why they saw the extension type, they want to the extension code, the extension type here, the API will actually restrict it a little bit. For example, some of the extension type are only used by the Angular application. Some are used for system. So when it's used for system, this extension type will be the default system or something. Last time we had a discussion.
Yeah.
We have a discussion. We put it in an Excel file or somewhere. Did we? No.
We can check the constant later.
Ah,
And of course, if from Angular or integration, it will be something like sys_applet.
Okay. So sys_applet or sys_ something, those are system one.
Okay.
But if it is
No, those are from external.
okay, from different system
Yeah, correct.
Okay, there needs to be some guideline
Yeah.
that we can establish Okay, so now if you are looking at storing into this document, you may be, Vincent, what is a mouse signal? What is this? What is that? If you are storing it here, right? Then you need to look at Google Docs. Okay, there's a document called
Signal.
Signal. Okay, so you search for Signal. Document BigLedger.
It's the Excel.
Okay, Excel. This field mapping.
I don't think so. I think it's without the BitLater word. It's just Signal. Yeah. See something?
I cannot find. Where is it? Or is it deleted accidentally?
It's still there.
Maybe you can send me the. Okay, I found it.
You found it, huh?
Yeah, so I don't know why I don't have it here, but okay. So if you look at this BigLedger document type, the document type, the quantity, and the signal, you can look at this document. There's a document header, there's a document line here. There's one very big differentiation between BigLedger and also the EMP is that in EMP, invoice is one table, sales return is one table, so everything in different table. But in the BigLedger, actually in the same generic document header and line, you actually storing sales return, purchase return, and everything else, credit note and everything else. Now, I'm not talking about the advantages, disadvantages due to the shortage of time, but I want to highlight one very big difference is that the cash receipt, traditionally in the line, we are just used to store the products. Item code A, item code B, item code C. We don't store the cash, right? So in the BigLedger, we're actually storing the cash.
For the document.
For the document, we are actually storing the cash, you know. So actually, why the so actually we are storing the cash, payment, credit card payment, and all these things. We can store it in the generic document line. And when we do that, you see, in Wavelet, when you have a cash sales, minimum you need to have an invoice together with a receipt as two different documents. But in BigLedger, right, because the document line can store the cash, the payment, the credit card, the whatever, that means that in one document alone you can actually settle all already. You can do a cash sale receipt with only one generic document. Understand? Okay. So and then I go back to your membership points that you discussed just now. This is located in membership points. This table, there's a membership point, and then there's a membership extension. This one is for the card. So that in Wavelet EMP, if you look at the member card, actually there are many columns. But if you look at this membership header, there's very limited columns. So all your fields are actually stored in the extension. And this has got the advantage, it's like in the future, any customers want to store anything that is non-standard, they can store it there without
in the extension,
without any customization. Yeah, understand? So for your needs and your currently, without talking about user login, you'll be mainly populating in these 3 tables. Yeah, this is different from Sengheng or some of the other customers' use cases where, let's say Thunder Mesh, if they want the user to be able to log in, actually they need to make sure that the login table, login principal, login subject is being populated. The users are created here. In BigLedger, when the users are being created here, then after that we can use the permission table to actually link it to the membership card that they are in, so that we can know, yeah, you can access, you can call the API, but which member card can you see? If you also don't want your, if you are a customer, you don't want your own member card information to be viewable by everybody else.
Sorry, may I ask, if like that, if we need only these 3 tables for currently, then what is the login subject UID, entity data UID is the compulsory thing?
Yeah, it's compulsory here in the API also, right?
Yeah.
You have to remove it already.
That only remove for the membership points, but
okay.
not the membership.
I see.
Okay.
Like let's say if the fellow doesn't register with BigLater, then he has no login subject, right? So
you're right. So in this kind of situation, your use case is more of using the BigLedger as a backend. That means that you have one user ID that is actually not used by a real human, but it is actually embedded in the ETL program that will actually call the API to sync.
Correct.
Yeah.
So you're not actually using the real person to, you know.
Yeah.
So in that case, you do not need to link every single membership with the login ID.
so what should he use for that field? The field for the login subject, what should he use to populate?
He doesn't need to populate the login subject. Let's say, for example,
Yeah.
in one living case, if their requirement is just telling you that I want to be able to see the data, right? So in the WeChat, right? So what happened is that I go to the next slide, okay? If you look at the next slides, so there's a human here, okay? Okay, there's a human here, and then they have a WeChat, and then after the WeChat is connected to what? The revenue monster server. So this revenue monster server is calling the API
From
at
the
the
BitLater.
account, okay? Account. Then the account, there's a ETL here. So then there's a EMP here. So in this case, if you look at this part, which is the API part, it is actually not, the end user is not coming directly to here, right?
Okay.
The end user is not coming to here. So that means only one server is calling our API, which is here,
Okay.
right? So when it's calling, do you need to have one login subject for every single
Don't need.
end user? You don't need.
Just put that person.
Okay. Now, but supposedly for Thunder Match, this is let's say I write here. This is one living case. Okay, so this is one living. But there's another guy. This is a Thunder Match customer, TM customer. Okay, this is one living customer. So, but for TM customer, the Thunder Mesh boss say, I want to have a website all that, or you do a progressive web app or something like that to allow me to access the API. So in this kind of situation, actually every user will have different username and password.
Means they have applet like Sangheng.
Like something like that, applet or something like that in here. So in this case, what happened is that if you go back to the database table, in this case they will need to have the app login subject and app login principal.
Yes.
And not only that, you need to specify the permissions. This is the permission table.
Okay.
And then not only that, you need to link it to the specific applet. This is the applet table. Then only from the applet they can access to the membership, which is this table. Then only they can come here if they have all the permissions. So it becomes more complicated. Understand? And then of course the syncing between EMP and the BigLedger is still the same, which is between the EMP and the BigLedger is still the same. In fact, if you are working on the BigLedger as a programmer, whatever you do for one customer, you do for all customers, because you are just developing the API. We are not like, we are just making it better, more complete, but we are not like having a different API for every customer. Supposedly, if some of the calls that you want to make to the API is more complicated, that means that if this successful, then do that, then do this, then do that, then this ETL part, instead of just a simple lambda, you can make use of a step function. Step functions allow you to do a permutation and combination of a lambda. You can also actually build scheduler to lambdas and schedule to be run every how many seconds, and then or how many minutes, how many hours. Then after that, you can actually use the lambda to save certain files into the S3 so that you have some persistence, because lambda do not have a persistence. Either you save into the S3 and use it as a logic, or you can save the data into DynamoDB if you like. DynamoDB is real-time database also in the cloud. So I know lambda do not have state. It is power up, then you do something, then you go to sleep. But it is possible that if you want to build something that is slightly stateful, you can actually use Dynamo or S3, or you can use the simple workflow system, or I go to here, this is SWF. Okay, so if you look at this AWS SWF example, this is a simple workflow service. Sometimes you want to say that if something is done, something is not done, then how, then next step, then do this, then do that. So here I give you 4 tools from the step function. If you are looking at S3, SWF, DynamoDB, or the other one is what, right?
Simple workflow service.
Simple workflow service, S3, Dynamo, yeah, okay.
What's the difference between step functions and simple workflow service?
Step functions allow you to easily orchestrate the lambdas. It is part of the lambda family. But simple workflows is a web service that you can call. That if you look at the simple workflow service, of course it will give you a lot more detail, whereby it gives you a logical separation. This is only focusing on the state machine. Looking at the processes parallel, then join, then this and that. Yeah, so this is mainly state machines. State machines, if you look at let's say Shark and Hydra. Okay, so this is like a workflow server. This is a documentation. If you want to know what is a proper workflow engine, it's quite complicated lah, but quite complicated. But we don't need to.
The step function is slightly simpler, right?
So if you look at the workflow pattern,
Yeah.
there's a sequence, there's parallel split, there's synchronization, exclusive choice, simple merge, multi-choice, structural, multi-merge, all these things. This is very heavily workflow driven.
Yes.
So simple workflow service is geared towards the workflow perspective of it, but if you're looking at what you need to do for take a data here and then save there, usually it's quite straightforward. It's not as complicated as a simple workflow.
Okay. So you have no concerns on the cost, right? Like DynamoDB for syncing, you ask you not to use, for example, right? Instead, you ask you to use store the thing in the, like the F file table, example.
Obviously, cost is a concern, but there are a few things that you need to consider. Let's say, for example, now you talk about for syncing case, the use case depends on the data structure. Some data structure are best stored in JSON. Then you use Amazon DynamoDB is good, but some data are actually flat format. Then it is better to store in the S3. DynamoDB is optimized for key value pair, and if you need certain column for indexing, and it's quite costly if you have too huge data, because it gives you the power that you do not use that, but then you subscribe to the service. So but at the same time, Amazon DynamoDB give you the caching mechanism, which you don't need if you're just storing most of the data that static nobody use, only use once to load, right? And then in addition to that, when it comes to the not only the indexing but when caching, but when it comes to the DynamoDB, it allows you to do all the streaming. That means that when the data is being saved, you can have triggers to do something, which is also available inside the S3 already. So you don't really need that in DynamoDB. And DynamoDB is optimized for writing and especially high-speed reading. High-speed reading, that means that if let's say you're doing live streaming or some sort of program that there are hundreds of thousands of people reading the same file simultaneously. Let's say in our account BigLedger platform, the user table or maybe the permission table or maybe the branch table or list of tenant table is like being hit like 100,000 times per second. Those kind of things, instead of accessing the database to do a query to search, and then I would prefer to actually use the DynamoDB to store this information. Okay. So I think it's about half an hour already. So okay, so today I think just to recap, we have introduced you a little bit on the database table for the BitLater schema, and then after that we continue with explanation of the database isolation level, and then you need to look at also some of the field mapping on a signal. And then if you go back to the Jamboard, I think you understand that the first thing that we discussed is the understanding of a different document type, whether it is a document or transaction or master data, or whether it is like Delta. All these are towards a secondary table that derive the data from the primary table, which is the documents. And then when you do the ETL, it is quite important for you to understand this basic.
So theoretically, to solve this problem, you can call that document a phone handshake document. What do you call this document?
Point adjustment.